by rolling, I mean the computer is.
That's right.
Is hit record.
Power up the device.
hppodcraft.com.
Horrible beyond conception was the change which had taken place in my best friend, Crawford Tillinghast. I had not seen him since that day 2 months and a half before, when he had told me toward what goal his physical and metaphysical researches were leading. When he had answered my awed and almost frightened remonstrances by driving me from his laboratory and his house in a burst of fanatical rage, I had known that he now remained mostly shut in the attic laboratory with that accursed electrical machine, eating little and excluding even the servants, but I had not thought that a brief period of 10 weeks could so alter and disfigure any human creature. It is not pleasant to see a stout man suddenly grown thin, and it is even worse when the baggy skin becomes yellowed or grayed, the eyes sunken, circled, and uncannily glowing, the forehead veined and corrugated, and the hands tremulous and twitching. But such was the aspect of Crawford Tillinghast on the night his half-coherent message brought me to his door after my weeks of exile. Such the specter that trembled as it admitted me, candle in hand, and glanced furtively over its shoulder, as if fearful of unseen things, in the ancient lonely house set back from Benevolent Street.
It's just a block down from Fascination Street.
The street may be benevolent, but I'm not sure if Crawford Tillinghast's intentions are.
Oh, they are not, sir. This is the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
That's right. We're here at hppodcraft.com. My name is Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey. We're co-hosts of this show, and that reader was Bruce Green.
Bruce Green, who is a wonderful actor and good friend of ours. He will actually be exhibiting his talents in a short film / television pilot that Chris and I put together with our friend David Robertson called The Ward. I'd remind our listeners again that that's showing on October 23rd at the Vampire Film Festival in New Orleans, Louisiana. But before we talk too much more about that, let's get on to the story. Today we're talking about
From Beyond.
From Beyond, which I love this story.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love it. And, I'm not going to pretend right off the bat, try and be impartial.
No.
Chad, before we were getting started, he was saying to me, we should just read this whole damn story because every single bit is awesome.
I love it. Some people have complained about this story's melodrama, but it works on me.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm hypnotized.
It's been a while since I read it, though. I picked it up again. The first thing that struck me, because it's in the first sentence, is that name, Crawford Tillinghast. It sounds like an old Republican senator, like Saxby Chambliss or something. The chair recognizes Crawford Tillinghast. He has some kind of machine he'd like to turn on in the Senate chamber. I say let's give it a shot. Oh, my pineal glands. Suddenly a fire. I love in that first line as well when he says, horrible beyond conception.
You can't conceive this thing. Well, the horribleness you can't conceive.
Yeah.
Oof. But anyway, so what's going on here? This guy, our narrator, he knows Crawford Tillinghast. Mm-hmm. He never names himself. So the narrator is again...
He's our narrator.
Is just the narrator. And he used to work with Crawford Tillinghast, or was a colleague of his, and then Crawford was working on this project and, just said, get out of here. I don't want none of your stuff. Just go.
Well, Crawford told him what he was working on. And the protagonist didn't like it.
He didn't like it. He thinks it was a bad idea.
So now you shouldn't be doing that. In fact, our protagonist has an opinion about Crawford studying science at all.
Yeah, he thinks it was a mistake. Because
he says
that Crawford Tillinghast should ever have studied science and philosophy was a mistake. These things should be left to the frigid and impersonal investigator, for they offer two equally tragic alternatives to the man of feeling and action. Despair if he fail in his quest, and terrors unutterable and unimaginable if he succeed.
Yeah!
Those are the two options.
Yeah, that's it.
Because as we all know, Newton lost his mind when he figured out gravity.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, I think he did lose his mind a little in the final years of his life.
I'm not sure.
But I think it's because he had mercury poisoning now.
Oh, well, that happens.
But this is the Frankenstein story, to an extent.
Well, sure. I mean... And typical Lovecraft stuff. The more you know, the less you're going to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And, scientific exploration is opening up, horrible vistas, if you will.
Yeah, if you're successful. But if you're an emotional person, as Crawford is, chances are good that you're going to fail as a scientist. That holds true even today. I mean, the rule is that most of the theories that you put out there will get disproven. on the quest towards finding a better theory or a better
Absolutely.
conception of the world around you. So for somebody who's incredibly emotional and takes things personally, he probably should have gone into the arts, not science.
Right.
10 weeks earlier, when he booted him, Crawford kind of lined out what it was that he wanted to do.
"What do we know," he had said, "of the world and the universe about us? Our means of receiving impressions are absurdly few, and our notions of surrounding objects infinitely narrow. We see things only as we are constructed to see them, and can gain no idea of their absolute nature. With 5 feeble senses, we pretend to comprehend the boundlessly complex cosmos, yet other beings with a wider, stronger, or different range of senses might not only see very differently the things we see, but might see and study whole worlds of matter, energy, and life which lie close at hand, yet can never be detected with the senses we have. I have always believed that such strange, inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows. And now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers."
Basically, Crawford's got some kind of machine, and it generates certain waves which act on sense organs we have that are dormant or atrophied.
Yeah.
And conceptually, this is just great. It affirms all of the feelings that we have throughout our lives, that spooky feelings, that there's things in the environment coexisting right there with us.
Well, like when a cat or a dog, reacts or starts barking, and you don't understand why. It's easy for a person to think, hey, they've got some kind of hyper sense, that they're aware of something that I'm not.
Or the hair raises on the back of your neck inexplicably.
Right.
Or you just feel that there's definitely something around the corner of your house, or even in the room with you at night.
Very common.
But a cool way to approach it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's taking what was typically the realm of the supernatural and bringing it into the realm of science, and saying that all those things aren't ghosts and goblins, and they're just creatures that are shifted out of our plane of awareness,
right?
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So our protagonist got booted when he said he didn't think that was cool, and he's been finding out from Crawford's butler how things have been going over the last 10 weeks. That's how he knew that he'd been up in the attic lab going nuts and not talking to anybody. And he gets a shaky note from Crawford. Mm-hmm. Looks bad, and it says, "Why don't you come by? I got some things to show you." And
was that a Crawford impersonation?
That was my impersonation.
It sounded a little like Jimmy Stewart. You did.
Come on by and have a look. I got a dreamy machine. It's purpley and it make you see protoplasms. He shows up.
Yes.
And he's a scientist as well.
Yeah.
We assume. Mm-hmm. And even though, he's a little prudish about this kind of research, kind of can't help but get caught up in the excitement.
Well, hey, it's some kind of discovery. Something's happened, and he wants to know.
Yeah.
So when he gets to the house, first thing he notices, all lights are off.
That's right.
Power's out.
And it seems like Crawford's done this on purpose. He says,
"It would be too much. I would not dare," he continued to mutter. I especially noted his new habit of muttering, for it was not like him to talk to himself. We entered the laboratory in the attic, and I observed that detestable electrical machine, glowing with a sickly, sinister, violet luminosity.
Cool description of the machine.
Yeah, it's a glowing machine.
I like that Lovecraft doesn't really write in black and white. I mean, he's really fond of colors, as we'll see throughout his work going on.
I mean, I think he even says in this story that coming up here, you're going to see colors that you've never seen before.
That's right.
The luminosity increased, waned again, then assumed a pale outre color or blend of colors, which I could neither place nor describe. Tillinghast had been watching me and noted my puzzled expression. "Do you know what that is?" he whispered. "That is ultraviolet." He chuckled oddly at my surprise. "You thought ultraviolet was invisible, and so it is. But you can see that and many other invisible things now."
Yeah.
The protagonist is like, "Wait a minute, you brought me up here to look at a tanning bed?" No,
not at all. This machine is working. He's
not wasting any time.
No, he's on, and boom, you're going to be seeing some stuff. Get ready.
I appreciate that Lovecraft doesn't waste any time with us either.
Yeah, no, this story it's not very long. It's only a few pages, and it's crammed full of awesome stuff.
Yeah, he says, "Come up here. I got the machine on, and it's already kind of showing unseeable things to the protagonist, like UV rays." So Crawford sits directly across from him, He blows out the candle they've been using to find their way, and he stares into his eyes.
Uh-huh.
And he explains that starting with the ears, he will be able to perceive new things.
Yeah.
And he says that there's a sense organ in his brain that actually is the most important sense organ, that this thing is going to trip up.
The pineal gland.
That's right.
That's right.
Gland.
Well, it was something that Joshi wrote. He said that what his reference to the pineal gland is a bit of a joke. Lovecraft made a joke.
Oh, really?
Because René Descartes had proposed that the gland was the point of mediation between the material body and the spiritual soul.
Right. I think that, scientists, when they were dissecting brains and looking at this thing, they couldn't figure out what it did.
Yeah.
It's just this vestigial organ until fairly recently, actually. I mean, now we know that it controls melatonin, which helps regulate sleep cycles.
Yep.
So it's got a purpose.
It does, yeah.
But it even is an inhibitor of sexual maturity in children. More melatonin is produced by the pineal gland, and then it begins to pull back when you go through puberty. Which I was thinking a little about Stuart Gordon's From Beyond movie, which has a lot of overt sexuality in it.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
I thought, well, all right, maybe.
Yeah, maybe it's something.
The science of the brain still isn't all the way there, though. So there are still pieces of the brain that we don't understand. And even the pineal gland, they're speculating on a lot of things now. They still don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lovecraft also wrote about it. So, so we've got some scientific proof.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There.
So there's what they're saying about melatonin now, but they're really just building on the science that Lovecraft laid out.
Yes, exactly.
In this document.
In this document.
So anyhow, the protagonist, the machine starts, his pineal gland gets all charged up, and he starts tripping out. It says,
I looked about the immense attic room with the sloping south wall, dimly lit by rays which the everyday eye cannot see. The far corners were all shadows, and the whole place took on a hazy unreality which obscured its nature and invited the imagination to symbolism and phantasm. During the interval that Tillinghast was silent, I fancied myself in some vast and incredible temple of long-dead gods, some vague edifice of innumerable black stone columns, reaching up from a floor of damp slabs to a cloudy height beyond the range of my vision. The picture was very vivid for a while, but gradually gave way to a more horrible conception, that of utter, absolute solitude in infinite, sightless, soundless space. There seemed to be a void and nothing more, and I felt a childish fear which prompted me to draw from my hip pocket the revolver I always carried after dark since the night I was held up in East Providence.
Love that little detail.
Yeah. Obviously, Lovecraft wanted this guy to have a gun.
Yeah.
And
Right.
He's like, well, why would the guy carry a gun? Maybe he got held up. And East Providence is not a good part of town.
Really?
I'm guessing.
Well, you know what?
He got held up there.
Sure. And in my head, I immediately filled in this detail. The people that held him up were those three hoodlums who tried to rob the terrible old man.
I didn't think
and
that.
They got their just desserts. So I made that connection.
I think that's a perfect connection.
I would love to treat all of these smaller stories by H.P. Lovecraft. Sometimes they do get turned into movies, but they're so slight of stories that they have to add a lot of things.
Oh, right.
But
yeah.
I would love to do a treatment that was like Shortcuts, that Altman movie, where they took a bunch of Raymond Carver stories.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they just made them into
together.
little vignettes, but
Yeah,
tied the people together.
Yeah. That's an idea.
It is an idea.
It is an idea. It's a very good one, actually.
Yeah. Right. I just let Lovecraft do the work, and then I come up with a good idea.
Yeah, great.
How to package it.
Then, from the farthermost regions of remoteness, the sound softly glided into existence. It was infinitely faint, subtly vibrant, and unmistakably musical, but held a quality of surpassing wildness which made its impact feel like a delicate torture of my whole body. I felt sensations like those one feels when accidentally scratching ground glass. Simultaneously, there developed something like a cold draft which apparently swept past me from the direction of the distant sound. As I waited breathlessly, I perceived that both sound and wind were increasing, the effect being to give me an odd notion of myself as tied to a pair of rails in the path of a gigantic approaching locomotive. I began to speak to Tillinghast, and as I did so, all the unusual impressions abruptly vanished.
It's so evocative and visceral. Like all the, it's like he's really, when Lovecraft's writing this, he's really thinking about all the senses. He's thinking about what he's feeling. He's thinking about what he's hearing. It's not just what he's seeing.
Yeah,
it's
really
cool.
Experience.
Yeah, this is some great stuff.
And our protagonist wants to tell Crawford all of these things as well. And when he whispers, Crawford says, you might want to be quiet.
Don't move, he cautioned. For in these rays we are able to be seen as well as to see.
That's creepy, man.
Yeah, well, what happens, and he goes on to explain that, the servants didn't know about that.
Yeah, they didn't just, go away 3 days ago. He says that woman, that housekeeper I've had working for me, she turned on the lights downstairs while they had the machine on, and the wires picked up what he calls sympathetic vibrations. And after that, her empty heaps of clothes were just lying around
there was
the
a
house.
scream.
Yeah,
she screamed, yeah. She turned on the light, she screamed, looked down, empty clothes. Yeah, well...
Yeah, dangerous stuff.
So that's why he doesn't turn on the electricity.
Right.
Yeah.
The combined shock of the revelation and of the abrupt command gave me a kind of paralysis, and in my terror my mind again opened to the impressions coming from what Tillinghast called beyond. I was now in a vortex of sound and motion with confused pictures before my eyes. I saw the blurred outlines of the room, but from some point in space there seemed to be pouring a seething column of unrecognizable shapes or clouds, penetrating the solid roof at a point ahead and to the right of me.
I'm imagining all kinds of H.R. Geiger sort of...
Oh, yeah. This is, which is cool about a written story. It really lets your mind fill in, all the stuff. And anything that you're going to come up with in your head is going to be really creepy compared to, seeing it in a movie.
Which is why my Shortcuts movie is not going to work at all. Because it's much cooler, folks, to just read it.
Yeah.
Everything goes crazy in the room, and he himself feels as if he's going to melt apart. He describes the scene that he's watching as if it's projected in a cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a mess of strange sights just kind of thrown on reality, the reality of the room.
Right. He mentions that it's got a kind of a kaleidoscopic kind of, trippy. It really feels like one of those, 70s drug movie things.
Yeah,
it's like,
totally.
Wow, psychedelic kind of.
Right, but well done.
But much cooler and scarier.
And I like it anytime, since we're speaking about movies, I know that the traditional belief is that Lovecraft really didn't like cinema.
Yeah, well, I mean, not all cinema. I read
things that he liked.
Yeah, Joshi said that he did like a few things, but he thought, I think Frankenstein was really silly.
Yeah, Frankenstein and Dracula.
One of the two.
But he does use some imagery sometimes of the cinema and the silver screen in some of his stories, as evidenced here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's something that he's familiar with and he's thinking about. But speaking of those things that were coming down through the ceiling and the walls, he says,
foremost among the living objects were great, inky, jellyish monstrosities, which flabbily quivered in harmony with the vibrations from the machine. They were present in loathsome profusion, and I saw, to my horror, that they overlapped, that they were semi-fluid and capable of passing through one another and through what we know as solids. These things were never still, but seemed ever floating about with some malignant purpose. Sometimes they appeared to devour one another, the attacker launching itself at its victim and instantaneously obliterating the latter from sight. Shudderingly, I felt that I knew what had obliterated the unfortunate servants, and could not exclude the things from my mind as I strove to observe the other properties of the newly visible world that lies unseen around us.
That's horrifying, especially when he describes one of them going after the other.
Yeah, I totally picture it in my head, like this jellyfish, like they're all just kind of floating around, and all of a sudden one goes, just gets it, just sucks it right up.
Yeah, and when Crawford addresses these things, what he says is so laced with menace. He says,
"You see them? You see them? You see the things that float and flop about you and through you every moment of your life? You see the creatures that form what men call the pure air and the blue sky?"
Yeah, all these things that you think are beautiful and benevolent are just seething with these evil, disgusting, horrible creatures.
This is why when they list the transcendentalists, it's never Thoreau, Emerson, and Lovecraft. Because even nature is, seething with menace in his fiction.
Yeah, but the next thing that he says, he's like, you think that stuff is what killed the servants?
Yeah.
Oh, buddy, you've got no idea. You're in for something. You should look right over your shoulder.
He says,
"You tried to stop me. You discouraged me when I needed every drop of encouragement I could get. You were afraid of the cosmic truth, you damned coward, but now I've got you. What swept up the servants? What made them scream so loud? Don't know, eh? You'll know soon enough.
So he's kind of going a little, this is true mad scientist.
Yeah, he's totally nuts and just mean.
Yeah, and he's going to use his new discoveries to get his friend who he invited over.
Right, to kill him and out of revenge because he wasn't nice enough to him.
He didn't support him.
He
wasn't the wind beneath his wings.
No,
That's
I guess.
what he needed.
I would just think he shouldn't, call him or hang out with him anymore.
Yeah.
Just...
No, instead he's going to... Well, these things have been hunting him, but he's kind of learned...
Yeah, don't move and be quiet.
Don't move and be quiet, but also, don't really look at them. I mean, Crawford says he basically has learned how to not look at them. It's almost like a Medusa thing. When Perseus hunts Medusa, he looks in the shield, he doesn't look right at her. Or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't look at the thing because it's...
Oh, right.
It's not that the things are going to necessarily devour you in any conventional way. It's that they are so insanely different than anything you've ever witnessed before. Mm-hmm. That you'll disintegrate.
I keep thinking of those, those little floaty things in your eyes that you can't like. If you try to look directly at it, it moves out of the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're called floaters.
The floaters, yeah.
I think of those all the time because I have really bad ones in my right.
Yeah, I think they drive me crazy. It's just if the light hits it just right, you can kind of see them. But every time you try to look at them,
Yeah, it's fluid in your eyes that over the time that you age gradually hardens.
Yeah.
And so little specks of it are floating around in your eye, and you can perceive them, but your brain gradually learns to block out those portions of your field of vision. But if you look at something white or a computer screen or brightly lit, you'll see them suddenly. God, that must have driven some people crazy before science.
I guess.
They must have thought they were seeing this.
I'm sure people had some crazy explanations for those things.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Well, anyway, so he says...
Don't worry, they won't hurt you. They didn't hurt the servants. It was seeing that made the poor devils scream so. My pets are not pretty, for they come out of places where aesthetic standards are very different. Disintegration is quite painless, I assure you, but I want you to see them. I almost saw them, but I knew how to stop. You are not curious? I always knew that you were no scientist. Trembling, eh? Trembling with anxiety to see the ultimate things I have discovered? Why don't you move then? Tired? Well, don't worry, my friend, for they are coming. Look, curse you, look! It's just over your left shoulder.
Yeah, there it is, pal. Just look over your shoulder and you're gonna get a freaking eyeful and it's gonna eat you, because that's what...
Yeah. It's like a great ghost story around a campfire, Where's my golden arm? You've got it! But then the incident just abruptly ends.
He stops. Well, the narrator, quits talking about it. He says, okay, the rest of the stuff you guys can check out in the newspapers, because what happened... He pulls out his gun that he had his hand on, pulls it and just blasts the machine.
Right. It's a little switcheroo there because, the cops find him and they find him with a revolver and they arrest him because Crawford is dead in the chair across from him.
Right, but not dead from a bullet wound.
No. So when they discover that he shot the machine, which is really cool, he stopped it from happening. He's dead from that disease that stalks all of Lovecraft's fiction. Apoplexy.
Good old apoplexy.
Yeah. But I assume it was because the machine stopped so abruptly and Crawford had learned that second sight so well that having it so abruptly ripped away from him.
Yeah, I think it was probably traumatic to his brain and he wasn't able to, slowly get out of it. Or, that's probably what Lovecraft was trying to...
effectively done. I thought
absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I did.
It was a great little, red herring. Did he shoot him? Oh no, he shot the machine.
Yeah,
it was neat.
Yeah,
and protagonist doesn't really know what to do with the information that he's gotten in the last half hour or whatever. He kind of half-assed tells the coroner, what he saw, and the coroner's got a great explanation. Oh, you just got hypnotized.
Well, I bet it's the last paragraph.
Yeah.
I wish I could believe that, Doctor. It would help my shaky nerves if I could dismiss what I now have to think of the air and the sky about and above me. I never feel alone or comfortable, and a hideous sense of pursuit sometimes comes chillingly on me when I am weary. What prevents me from believing the doctor is this one simple fact, that the police never found the bodies of those servants whom they say Crawford Tillinghast murdered.
And that is the end of the story.
That's the end.
Man, I freaking love this story, dude. There's not a lot of character development or anything like that.
It's a great scene.
But it's really good writing, really, you just really feel it, and it's really interesting. And he explores all these different sights and sounds and feelings that I feel like you can only really get from written word,
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get from a movie, you're not going to get it from a song.
Again, the thing that I find really great about this story is that it attacks something that is quite conventionally treated. usually, which is that there are unseen things that are menacing us in the world.
Yeah.
Usually those are treated as ghosts or demons. Case in point, I just saw a movie this weekend called Paranormal Activity. It's a really low budget little movie that's making the rounds around the country. Really frightening movie. It's kind of like a Blair Witch Project, but they set up the camera to record incidents that are happening to this woman.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer.
Who's being menaced by an unseen force in her house, and it is like a demon that's doing it. But I or a ghost or whatever, which are things that I don't believe in, but it still scared me because I can share in that like everybody can. That terrible feeling that there's something.
Yeah, something that's right beyond your senses, and,
Right.
and again, if you can't sense it, you can't do anything about it, and it makes you powerless.
And this is a great way into that. Same feeling, different approach. It's not something ridiculous and hard to get to, like somebody died, their soul is angry, and so it's wandering around the house, and sometimes it manifests itself, and sometimes it doesn't. It's saying that there are these other dimensions with creatures and things in them that exist and coexist with us, and they're right there all the time. Mm-hmm. We just can't see them.
We can't see them or interact with them.
And they don't necessarily like us, and if they could see us, they might mean us harm.
They could, and occasionally, sometimes those boundaries get a little thinner and stronger between dimensions. It's really cool, and I mean, this story is really where Lovecraft starts laying out his kind of cosmic view, of things. Like the universe is vast and frightening, and the more you learn about it, the creepier it's going to get, and it's him blending again, like from, Beyond the Wall of Sleep. He's blending technology and the supernatural together, and it's about a machine, a scientific device that is doing these things. It's not about some prayer or a ghost or a ritual.
And this machine, to me, was a lot more credible than the dream machine from Beyond the Wall of Sleep. And credible in that he didn't just describe it at all.
Yeah.
Much like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, they don't go into how he creates the monster.
No, I believe it's like a few sentences.
And just like, because you don't need to know, that's actually not the important part.
No.
So here, the only thing he says is that there's no, ordinary battery running it.
Right.
It's not a chemical battery, which is cool. And it's got these lights.
And
but that's really all you need to know. Good enough.
Well, this story was written in 1920, but it was first published in the Fantasy Fan in 1934, so it's a long time before it got published.
Yeah.
S.T. Joshi wrote an essay called The Sources from Beyond, and he traces the philosophical underpinnings of the story to Hugh Elliott's Modern Science Materialism that Lovecraft often, he read in 1919, I think, and he mentioned it in his letters.
Modern Sciences and Materialism?
Yes. The themes in that are, they talk about the fallibility of your senses, that there are existence of colors that we can't see, that we can't perceive, which is true. We can't see ultraviolet or infrared. And also that matter consists mostly of empty space. If you look at an atom, the fact that, there's a lot of empty space between the, the particles of an atom. So we're actually quite a bit of empty space. So those are some of the ideas that Lovecraft was thinking about at the time when he was writing the story, and obviously inspired him.
The depths of the ocean, the depths of the earth, the depths of the cosmos, and even our everyday, ordinary atomic structure is now laced with monstrosities. The guy, he looks into every possible setting and says, how could I squeeze a few monsters in there?
There's got to be more creeps in there.
Yeah.
Everything's really creepy, and it's going to get you, so look out.
Even the air around us.
In nature, if you look at nature, is a pretty brutal thing. There's lots. Certain environments are less brutal than others. Like if you want to go down to the Amazon, there's so many poisonous animals and creatures that it's very easy to be killed and die.
Well, the entire world right now, truthfully, is under attack by an unseen monster, the swine flu. Everybody's kind of panicking about it, but the world is teeming with invisible life forms that we can't see or directly confront, yet do confound and sicken us constantly.
Yeah.
People didn't used to know about them, and because of the advances of science, now we know about them, and we can more adequately combat them. But they change and shift every year, too.
Yeah, I know. One thing that it seems, as science is progressing, people seem to be able to cope with it pretty well.
It's true. Yeah, you're right.
Nobody's going nuts, with new scientific discoveries yet, at least.
Right.
But I think that's one of those things that it's fun to think about these horrible, unknowable things and think that they would blow your mind if you try to figure them out.
Yeah.
But humans are pretty mentally elastic. We're able to really compensate and change our behavior and what it is that we need.
Yeah.
And
it's those sudden shocks when somebody turns on a machine and you see all of it at once that can drive you crazy.
Maybe that'll drive you a little nuts.
And for the scientist, they're the first person. I mean, the first person to cross some new threshold of discovery, as Crawford is here. Mm-hmm. It can lead to madness because you are taking for the human race the sum of that knowledge. You're the pinpoint. You're the one that gets it first, and it might not make sense with the world that you know. So I could see how that might drive.
It's definitely fun stuff, and again, this is just, in my opinion, a really well written story. Like there's just. The structure, the actual prose, it's all really cool ideas. Kudos, Mr. Lovecraft. I feel like we're finally getting into the good stuff.
Yeah, this is really the stuff I like.
I just want to say, again, if you like the show, please go to iTunes and give us a review. We also have forums at hppodcraft.com. There seems to be more and more activity every day. People are talking about interesting Lovecraft-related things and about our podcast. So,
and next week we will be doing The Picture in the House.
Picture in the House? That's exciting. I like pictures in houses.
It's a very creepy story and one of my personal favorites, and I thought it'd be good as we approach Halloween to do something about an old rambling house and a thunderstorm and an old man with a book from Africa.
I'm getting scared already just thinking about it. Well, Chad, I want to say you are Chad Piper.
Thanks for saying that. Whew. Identity confirmed. And you are Chris Lackey.
Indeed.
And I have had a great time, my friend, chatting with you about From Beyond.
Yeah, me too. Good times. This is the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
We're at hppodcraft.com.
Thanks.
hppodcraft.com.